Our idea was not only to put the focus on those migrant children. We are not going to do another time a distinction between migrant children and host encounter children, but we are working on an inclusive approach, so everyone can feel in his place and can feel secure to learn and develop their knowledge and competencies. So in our project, we decided to work with the teachers, with the head schools, because we believe that it starts from the school. It starts from the learning environment where the children are getting to know each others, are helped with the school teachers to develop their basic knowledge, but also how to be empathic with the other children. Today, we are getting to the final step of our project. We have been working on it since 2.5 years now. We developed some tools that I will be presenting later on during the final conference. But first, I will leave the floor to our key speakers, and I will present them briefly, and then I will leave them the floor to present more themselves. Fatima Awil from Mental Health Europe, thank you for being with us. Andrea Lapina from Lifelong Learning Platform, sorry. And Mujib Atal from Migrant Policy Group. Thank you for being today with us. I will invite you to the roundtable with Valentina, who will facilitate it. And of course, we will have a time after to present the project tools, and then what we will word cafe, but I will explain the process later when we get to that. Thank you, and enjoy the final conference.
So if the speakers could please take a seat. So hi everyone, welcome. I'm Valentina from Sirius Network, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. We have prepared for you a roundtable who's going to focus on the Enable project and his outcomes, but also on what matters the most to us, which is how to build a more inclusive and learning education in our European schools. So with us today, we have Andrea La Peña, who is representing a lifelong learning platform, and he will discuss with us the role of inclusive education and how European policies, especially in teacher training, can foster a better inclusive schools for our countries. And he will shed some light on the key barriers that exist at the moment and what steps can be taken to overcome it. Fatima, so thank you, Andrea. Fatima Awil from Mental Health Europe. She will take a dive into the psychological challenges, especially for migrant and refugee children, and which one they face currently in their educational path, and particularly those linked to trauma. She will explore trauma-informed approaches and how can we help to implement them in school in the most effective way possible. So thank you, Fatima. Mujib Atal from Migrant Policy Group. He will provide an overview on the policy landscape at both European and national level, and he will highlight for us the existing gaps in integration policies and what can be done to make them more effective, which is, he has a huge one, Mujib. Thank you for being here with us. And Peter Fredericks, sorry for my Italian pronunciation. He's an expert in emotional development. He's a researcher who will discuss the challenges related to recognizing and addressing difficult behaviors, particularly in children with intellectual disabilities. Peter and I had a really nice conversation the other day. He has some amazing insights in how emotional development has taken a huge role in education right now. So it's going to be really interesting, I think. So thank you, Peter, for being here with us. So the discussion will be structured in 2 rounds of questions. The first round, we're going to try and set the context and the challenges that all of our professionals face in their specific area of expertise. And in the second one, we're going to try and find some framework for solutions and recommendation, which is our goal, like all the way. So thank you very much. Speakers, you have 7 minutes each to make your points. So let's start with Andrea on my right. So Andrea, you're from a lifelong learning platform. So the role of inclusive education has been a huge part of your job. So if you had 7 minutes to explain us what are the key barriers in the European education system, what, especially with teacher training, which is some like a topic that has to have some more focus, maybe. What would you tell us about it?
Good morning, everyone. I would tell you that it's very difficult to analyze all the barriers in only 7 minutes, but I will try nevertheless. So yeah, I work for the Lifelong Learning Platform, and for those of you who don't know it, it's an umbrella organization of more than 40 other European organizations active in education and training. As the name suggests, we mean education as broadly as possible. In a lifelong learning perspective, our motto is that education happens from cradle to grave, which is a bit dark if you take the grave part, but you get what I mean. And when it comes to lifelong, it's quite self-explanatory because it says that, well, education really happens from the moment we're born and even before till the moment we die. But it also has so this is the temporal dimension, if you want, of lifelong learning, but there's also a spatial dimension. A few years ago, we were actually just suggested that we change our name into lifelong and life-wide learning, because learning happens in very diverse spaces, or what we call learning environments. And this is a concept that I would like for you to take, put it in a little box, and maybe we'll come back to it later. But working at European level, we can see that there are quite a few challenges and barriers to actual inclusion. One of our mission is actually to foster more inclusive education systems around Europe. But when we talk about systems in Europe, we need to realize that this union is composed of 27 member states, which have many more education systems, because in most cases, member states have regional competences for education. This is the case of Belgium, for instance, which is not even regional, but it's community-based, which adds extra layers of difficulty, if you want. But if we want to go towards the main barriers that we have identified, that we know exists into the real inclusion of migrant children, of children with a migrant background into our education systems, we can go towards 3 main points, if you want. The first one is the actual access to education. So the idea is here is that the right to education, regardless of status, resident status, of migrant status, is only enshrined legally into about half of our member states. It still happens, but legally there's an obligation only for half of them, which is definitely not enough, even though it's still part of the fundamental rights of the EU. This is still not a reality in every member state. The second one is the fact that despite there being a right to access education, children and families with a migrant background suffer the most from early school leaving and early dropouts. The figures are staggering as compared to other vulnerable groups. Migrant children are the ones that are less likely to finish compulsory education. This is because in most cases, families suffer from poverty status that prevents children from staying in school. I'm using terms a bit interchangeably here. Children, we mean until 18 years old in most cases. Perhaps it just refers to students or learners. And this is proven to be one of the most difficult barrier if you want to overcome, because it goes back. It paints a very complex picture. It goes back to status, to poverty status, and to social status. There's also one more barrier that I would like to put on the table, and that is the language barrier. Even in the most praised education system in Europe, which is most cases Finland. Finland is always praised as to being the best education system. Even in Finland, Only about 1/3 of pupils aged 10 or more receive language training. Pupils with a migrant background, of course. And this is a very big barrier. At the Lifelong Learning Platform, we have always praised the role of non-formal and informal education on top of what is formal. We often tend to divide learning environments into formal, non-formal, and informal. When it comes to formal learning environment, this is quite easy. We think of a school, we think of a university, we think of an institutionalized form of learning, where learning is indeed the final goal of the activity that is carried out, and there's definitely a certification after that. Non-formal and informal learning are a bit blurrier if you want. Please don't take them as silos, they're not. But in non-formal education, it might not be institutionalized. There might not be a certification in the end, but still learning is the goal of the activity that we're carrying out. And why we're emphasizing non-formal and informal learning, because they have proven to be the best way to include newcomers into our societies. This is not me saying it, it's actually Serious Watch from 2018. I did my homework. There is a very strong evidence that non-formal methodologies in the classroom are the ones that break barriers the most. But are our teachers equipped to do that? Not really. The status of our teachers in Europe, in this is very widespread. We're talking Europe, but it's pretty much the same scenario everywhere. It's a bit grim. The European Union publishes a European education and training monitor at the end of every year, assessing a little bit the situation of education systems in Europe. And in 2019, the EU dedicated this monitor to the status of teachers. And the situation was very bad. Teacher shortages, low motivation, poor working conditions. They were all factors that would prevent them from actually carrying out their job properly, and therefore from learners to learn properly. In 2023, the monitor was dedicated again to teachers. And again, the problems were exactly the same. Teacher shortages, poor working conditions, no career perspective, and so on and so forth. So these are problems that are very well known. They're there, we know they're there. We know that they prevent education systems from being inclusive. And yet, what member states do, it's very little. But there's still hope. This was the part of the challenges. I'm painting a very grim picture. It will go better in the next round.
It's gonna be great for a little bit, and then we're gonna go into the light for the next round. Thank you, Andrea. It would be amazing to get your take on peer education as well. Unfortunately, we do not have time, but maybe it's a conversation for another time. So, going on to my left, Fatima. So you are gonna talk about trauma-informed approach. Well, the name is pretty self-explanatory, but if you could give us a picture of what a trauma-informed approach is supposed to be, and what challenges are we facing right now, or we are not facing them. Migrant children are facing right now in European schools, and how this approach can help us make more space and a more comfortable space for them to be in during their educational path.
Thank you so much, and good morning. I'm really happy to be here. During these next 7 minutes, I'll focus indeed on kind of some of the challenges that migrant and refugee children face in schools, but I'll also focus a bit on the approach that we really try to push for as part of Mental Health Europe. So for those who aren't aware, we're a European-based, Brussels-based organization. We have over 90 members in over 30 European countries. And what really connects us is that we push for a psychosocial and human rights-based approach to mental health. And I think that's how I will connect to the trauma-informed approach when it comes to mental health, and really what should be the standard when we look at inclusive education environments in Europe and beyond. So just to paint the picture, children in schools and specifically focusing on migrant and refugee children face unique experiences. And when we talk about mental health, we really try to underscore that it lies on a continuum from good mental health all the way to psychosocial disability. And our mental health is impacted by our socioeconomic environment. So though when we experience more risk factors, so things that negatively impact our mental health, we're more likely to experience mental health distress and experience mental health problems from bad mental health all the way to severe mental health problems. And on the opposite, when we have mental health protective factors, which are really factors that support individuals' mental health and support their needs, they are more likely to experience good mental health. And so it really depends on the individual, the context, and what they're experiencing when we look at what protective factors can look like and what risk factors can look like also. In schools for migrant children, to experience a new context and environment that you're not familiar with, factors that could lead to more mental health risk factors can include not feeling adequately supported in terms of access to information, in terms of process, in terms of knowing what to expect. So going to the educational environments without fully being kind of supported and guided. Other challenges could include language, which you already touched on in terms of not being able to fully express yourself or understand and also communicate with fellow peers and staff as well. Other challenges can include also the general environment not being supportive in the sense where individuals feel that they're being welcomed, that they're, that there will be kind of exchanges in terms of students supporting one another, whether we're talking about host children, reaching out and sharing information and vice versa. And that could really also be whether space is provided within the education environments to have these exchanges. So, the non-formal kind of settings where we sit down in a classroom is important, but there also should be spaces provided so that the children themselves can learn and understand each other as well as staff as well. Other challenges that can also exist is, if a child doesn't have opportunities to share experiences in terms of challenges that they're facing and support that could be better provided within the schools, then that dialogue won't happen. So there should be spaces for discussion in terms of, how are things going? Are there anything that we can do to better support you? And really having that kind of informal conversations that actually lead to action. So after, something is shared, what is actually being done to adjust the educational environments based on children's needs. And that can lead to, other conversations around trust and feeling safe in an environment. So if an individual shares, for example, that they're facing a particular struggle, how is this being dealt with in the environment? Is there consistency? Are there safe spaces for specifically migrant and refugee children to come together and discuss what they may uniquely be experiencing, but also things that overlap and intersect that they are all might be experiencing at a more frequent level within the environment that we're talking about. So these are some of the challenges, but also when we talk about schools, we have to also look further in terms of what support is taking place outside of schools. How are families and their wider communities being involved in the inclusive education spaces and really shaping it for their needs. So, our their community and families being informed of how they're doing in school. Are they involved in terms of shaping the environment and communicating what's being shared maybe outside of school. There we have to look at a whole schools approach, and that doesn't just mean the classroom, but also outside of this. And I wanted to talk about a few things in terms of when we talk about mental health. Mental health is really impacted by a couple of things. So this can include relationships with yourself. So this could be things like confidence and self-esteem. Mental health can also be impacted when we talk about relationships with others. So this could be positive social interactions and communications. And also, mental health also connects with the abilities to cope with life's demands. So really having healthy coping mechanisms. And this is really important and is something that we can maybe explore later on. But this connects to schools environment, you know, what's being done to support relationships with ourselves. So for children, you know, what's being done to improve their self-confidence and self-esteem. Are there safe spaces being created? In terms of relationships with others, what's being done to ensure positive social interactions and communications? And in terms of ability to cope with life's demands, you know, in terms of mental health, is there mental health literacy in schools? And what is being done there? So I will stop there because I've reached my time, but I'm happy to explore this later.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fatima. I think talking about mental health after we have all experienced 2-3 years of pandemic, especially kids who couldn't go to school, I think it's fundamental to address that because it has been an issue and maybe we have a bit overlooked it, focusing maybe on the physical health, which is obviously important, but mental health as well. Thank you so much. Majib, Atal, if you could give us a brief overview of what, in your expertise, are the most significant gaps that we're currently facing in European and national policy regarding specifically the inclusion of migrant children, and if you could give us some brief examples of what we could do at the moment to address them in a more specific way to go in the direction of effective policies.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation. It is very nice to be here. Just to be consistent with what Fatima and Andrea said, of course, there are a number of measures, working groups, and action plans which are inconsistent and sometimes not maintained, and it is affecting its outcome and effectiveness at EU level. But for this event, as you know, Migration Policy Group is working through such initiatives that we are here today, as well as with policymakers, practitioners, to improve education experiences of migrant students. And that is why currently we are collecting data on within serious project on education experiences of migrant students across several EU member states. And for this session, actually, I looked at one of the indicators, which is psychosocial support in around 15 member states in EU. And it's interesting that there are many shortcomings. But let me begin with this point that, as I mentioned, to be just consistent with what Fatima said, psychosocial support is very crucial for migrants. Migrants already experienced violence, traumatization, because they are coming from conflict-ridden societies. It is not only pre-migration that they experience such events, but also post-migration when they are coming to destination countries. Usually there are overt and covert forms of violence that they experience. And unfortunately, some of these covert and overt form of violence, including everyday discrimination, are not defined legally. For example, verbal violence or bullying. Verbal violence in institutions, particularly at school settings, are happening, and this has negative impact on students' mental and physical health. Within a 3 years project at the University of Erlangen, I, with some other researchers, we evaluated how verbal violence in institution impact mental health of pupils. And unfortunately, there were so many examples, and the findings have been published. It's indicating that it has severe consequences for pupils. This lead to sadness, crying, isolation, and even some people were referring to changing school and more resources. Unfortunately, when we are talking about criminality and radicalization, even in this debate, this kind of mental health support is actually missing, and even it's not a priority. And migrant students, particularly women, women with headscarf at school settings, they are badly affected. But coming to the states that I covered, yeah, of course, the aim of the Serious Watch project is at analyzing the main challenges in policy approaches for ensuring inclusive education environment for migrant children. And under the psychosocial services, I checked that, for example, in Finland, Andrea, you mentioned, well, actually in Finland, France, Ireland, Lithuania, Poland, Portugal, Slovenia, Spain, psychosocial services are available to migrant students, but to some degrees. In some other countries, such as Belgium, Croatia, Estonia, and Germany, mental health and social support services are not enough or easily accessible, often available at a school level. As Andrea, you mentioned, this is a limited number of psychologists and even social workers, pedagogues, and sometimes they are not working together. And this is a small number or a limited number of psychologists and pedagogues. And this is a huge problem. And unfortunately, the shortcomings that we have witnessed in the past, currently within the Serious project, and particularly that I looked at this one indicator of availability of psychosocial support for migrant peoples. This is confirmed by our findings, and of course this needs to be addressed at EU level, and to overcome such challenges and to have a very sound environment. But I would come to the recommendations maybe at a later stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Majib. Moving on to Peter for our last maybe little gray intervention. So you specialize in emotional development, which is something that affects migrant children, but maybe it's a more horizontal kind of issue that can affect basically every child going through maybe a rough time at home or at school or in other environments that they get in touch with. So from your point of view, how does emotional development influence symptomatic behaviors that we can maybe identify before they turn into actual issues or before they get bigger issues?
Thank you. Yeah, okay,
It works.
it works. Good morning, and indeed, thank you for inviting me and for giving so interesting perspectives already. So I'm going to try to tailor it, my explanation, to what you've already said, because I've heard a lot of similarities and a lot of interesting things. Foremost, I'm indeed a researcher, but I'm also a teacher. So that's kind of interesting in this concept, I think. Teacher at higher education at this moment. I teach social workers. So that's also my background. I'm a clinical, not a psychologist. It's not translatable in English, but social workers may be the best term of it. I worked with people with behavioral problems, youth behavioral problems, 10, 15 years experience. And I'm teaching the last 5 years and doing research. And our expertise center is Inclusive Society. That's the name of it. So I think it's a nice concept that we're trying to do here, or achieve here, inclusiveness, etc. And it's not an easy one. Um, the last couple of years, my main research will be on is on digital inclusion. So maybe that in the second round, some things, because there are some things like you said, cyberbullying is an immensely problem. Sexual harassment online is an immense problem, but that's maybe something for the second round table. Emotional development, that's the core basis, the framework of the research my colleague and I am doing. And it originated, for a little bit of explanation, it originated from an Hungarian psychiatrist who used that template for people with disabilities. In my opinion, it's an easy one why they use it on people with disabilities, because when we see, let's say, a 40 or 50-year-old person behaving themselves like a child in a childlike manner, sometimes not being a child is really important, but behaving sometimes from the perspective of emotional development. How do I go on with frustrations? Emotion regulation is a thing that's kind of obvious. We see a 40-year person behaving on an emotional level of that of a child. We understand that. But in the research we've been doing, we've seen that it's indeed applicable to each student or each child. But it's more difficult, and that's one of the challenges, I think. A 12-year-old person who is, let's say, in an emotion regulation behaving like a 6-year-old emotionally, that's not always so easily detectable. First thing. Second thing, it's not always easy what we expect from them. We mostly think you are 12 years old, so you should be able to behave or should be able to do this or that. That's not really easy to make that switch in our minds and indeed tailor our interventions on it. And I think in that kind of regard, it's for me, it connects to mental health, it connects to trauma, connects to the difficulties in learning. What we mostly see, and that's where my background with behavioral problems comes to, is very easy to use in this regard, is that all those behaviors, in my opinion, are symptomatic of something that's lying underneath, and it has mostly to do with emotional development and with mental health. When children are not feeling well because of, let's say, a trauma or something, they're being bullied or whatever, there are a lot of different things that can cause those issues. They're not going to be able to behave in how we supposedly think they should behave. And that's a key development with emotional development. Key picture is, it's not to see what you should be able to do if we just take a psychiatric or psychologist framework. A 12-year-old, you should be able to do this or that. 16-year-old should be able to mentalize and to reflect on the things they're doing. That's not always the case. So we tend to look at what are they being able to do, not what we should be doing, but what are they able to do. Because one of the main issues I've seen, of my colleague and I've seen in our research, is that a lot of professionals, social workers, teachers, etc., tend to set the bar a little too high, because we are thinking about the normal development and not taking into regard the traumas or the mental health. That's maybe not what it should be. And then we're going to ask those children some things that they aren't able to do. They don't do it. We get frustrated. We get angry. We ask it again. We do exactly the same thing, and the behavior goes bad and worse. That's a mind shift, I think, and that's something that's really important in looking at students, or for social workers looking at people with whose have behavioral problems or experience trauma, etc. And there's another difficulty, I think, another challenge in that is that when you are under stress, and trauma is, of course, a lot of stress, and sometimes trauma is experienced again and again and again, and then we have trauma on trauma on trauma. When we are under stress, our emotional development scale tends to drop a couple of years. It's not going to go into the details of the theory, but and that's something we also sometimes experience, let's say, when we are tired, when we are having a difficult time, when we have some issues at home, or parents are sick. Could be a number of difficulties. Sometimes enough is enough for us also. The thing is, when we have an upbringing and normal one between quotation marks, and we don't have a lot of trauma on trauma, but we grew up in an okay way, we can cope with it. And next day we're going to bed early, we're going to get up, and things are still maybe not as good as we want to, but we can cope with it. Children with who has experienced repeatedly stress or trauma, or are emotionally in their development is a little bit lower than their calendar age, they don't get there as easy as we do. And it is not that they can function well with just let's listen a little bit, okay, tell what's happening. No, like you said, you need to develop those spaces where they can talk to them. And the framework from emotional development is I think, in my opinion, a helpful one to look at the children that are sitting in front of us, and just at comprehensively understanding why they are behaving like that, what's happening underneath those behaviors. We added in our research something more, because with social workers I always talk about what is behind the behavior, because if you just go to the symptomatic behavior, then we're going to punish every student if they do something badly. That's not the way it should go. But not always what's behind the behavior. Why is the person acting in a way he or she is acting? But also what's the need that's there. And that's something I've learned from working with youth with behavioral problems, where we see that sometimes they are testing in the relationship with the adult. Just seeing, are you who you say you are? Are you doing what you say? So for teachers, I think it's really important when we have an expectation, we make it true. We be honest to what we say. That's for every adult, let's say, but in a teacher's way, it's also very important. The other challenge, of course, of maybe the last challenge, is that a teacher primarily should teach, I think. It's something I also have to do with the students. But I think having some comprehensive thought about what is emotional development, and it's always thinking about it in a monetarily way. At this moment, you're not able to do this or that. That doesn't mean you never will be able to do it, but at this moment, it's difficult. It's something I see, and I think COVID is something it has a much larger impact than all of us thought at that time. I see students with me, let's say 20, 21 years old, who are indeed experiencing more and more emotional problems, and struggling with mental health. And of course, I have some things to do. I have to teach some things, but I see adjusting or taking into account the mental health. It's really important just to show them and indeed create spaces, but also talk about it. Practice what you preach, actually. Just talk to people, giving them the spaces sometimes. I think I've had one student last week come up to me and said, okay, I have some problems at home. I'm not going to into detail, but there are definitely some really big problems at home. I'm not able at this moment just to be totally into the class, but I will be here. I try to do it, but I'm not, maybe I'm wandering off or something in my mind. Of course, that's not a problem. You try to talk to them, you can give them something, see what is behind it. Why is that? Why do they don't deliver a task in time? It's not always because they want to pest the teacher and not to say, I don't have any sense in it, I don't want to do it. No, maybe something is behind it. I think, and that's maybe the last thing, and what you could be doing then as a teacher is also dialogue and communication is very important in my opinion. Always communicate. It's something I've learned with people with children with behavioral problems. The first thing is communication. Dialogue is always open. And in my opinion, we can get a long way when we try to understand them, also set a bar on what to expect, but be able to see what can they cope with at that moment.
Thank you so much, Peter. It was a great addition on what Fatima said as well. So trying to get into the more practical and how can we make this, all these challenges that you explained to us from your point of view, how can we make and build effective solutions and policies, and how can we recommend given these expertise to policymakers how to make education better on a higher level, so on the European level and national one, if you feel like it. So Andrea, starting again from you, what do you think are the most effective policy-driven strategies that schools and educators can implement to foster long-term inclusion for migrant and refugee children?
Tough one. Okay, first off, is this thing on? Yes. First off, we need to realize that education is not an EU competence. It's still a national competence. So there's only so much that the EU can do. And actually what it can do is to suggest and share good practices. This is what the EU does in education, because it's still very much a national competence. Member states are very jealous of their own national systems, and rightfully so, because otherwise they would be very complicated. But we can see that there's a thrust from the local level to have a more harmonized education systems at the European level. I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, there was this very big conference on the future of Europe. And I was one of the experts for a very specific narrow group on harmonization of education systems. And all the citizens that were there, I was facilitating the exchange, all the citizens that were there said, can we just not have one education system in Europe? Legally speaking, no, you cannot, but it's a nice idea. But this is to say that there's indeed a thrust from below to have a harmonized system in Europe, at least. But the EU does suggest and recommend some good things. And as lifelong learning platform, we tend to facilitate this exchange between member states. We tend to provide expertise, and among the many things that we published over the years, there's one thing that I wanted to mention today, and is a briefing paper that we published together with CEDEFOP, the EU agency, and with the University College of Dublin, and it's called briefing paper on community lifelong learning centers. And this was a collection of basically good practices stemming from the local level. We always feel that the EU is this ivory tower that sees nothing from above, but the good practices should actually come from the local level. We have this collection of good practices where community lifelong learning centers, as we mean it, are basically schools that exist beyond schools. It's the idea of a whole school approach. It's the idea of connecting schools with their own community, and they have proven surprisingly effective in the inclusion of learners with a migrant background and their families into the community, not only in schools, but also in the community. The way they would work, okay, of course, different experiences from different member states have different features, but at the same time, the common one is that a school that functions only in the morning and only for pupils is not fulfilling its mission. The idea of a community lifelong learning center is a school, is a structure where everyone gets together. Pupils, of course, and teachers, okay, fair enough, but also their families, the parents and the guardians, the social structures that are in place. They organize activities beyond teaching hours. They organize activities beyond the curricula. They organize activities that have different learning methodologies than a classroom. A classroom, unfortunately, is the learning environment that changed the least over time. Think of the technological advancements that we had in the past, I don't know, in the past century, perhaps. The classroom stayed the same. The classroom is still the same from the 19th century, perhaps, till today. But what we learn and how we learn has evolved very much. And this change is not reflected in the learning environment that is the classroom and that is a school It's still probably the most important one. When we think of where we learn, we think of a classroom, but in reality, only 20% of our learning occurs in a formal education setting. The other 80%, it occurs in non-formal or informal education environments, like this one, for instance, very informal. So this is something that I would like to put forward. There's a nice publication that we have on our website. I would encourage you to go look it up, and I will also send it to Valentina, so perhaps it can be shared. There's another one. What the EU, what policies can actually do. So this is a multi-layer problem, which requires a multi-actor solution, if you want. And when teachers and educators are valued, then inclusive education systems can spur. I myself come from a family of teachers. My mom was a teacher, my grandma was a teacher, my aunt was a teacher. I myself was an adult teacher for a very short period of my life. And I can tell you that, I mean, knowing from experience, there's only so much a teacher can do with their time. At some point, I recall my mom towards the end of her career, she's now retired, she used to say to me, I would love to do A, B, C, and D, but I'm tired. I don't have time. I'm not paid enough. And you can see that the passion is waning at some point. So giving back some decent working conditions and professional development to teachers, some support to their task of facilitating learning could actually be something that that brings results. And there was one last thing that I wanted to mention today for this, and it's something that sometimes we forget, especially in this climate of where education is put in the spotlight as a means to an end. Today we see more and more education being under the spotlight for not delivering skilled workforce. This very commission, the Second von der Leyen Commission, has launched the Union of Skills just this month. This very comprehensive umbrella initiative where all other education and training initiatives should live within. And the idea is really that education should deliver a skilled workforce because we should fill the skills gap with the labor market, and the universities are not preparing the young people enough for the labor market, which is perhaps even true. But there is a very large amount of evidence that education works best when it's implemented for its own sake and not to serve something else. I read a book from it was commissioned by UNESCO, and it's called The Role of Education in Enabling the 2030 Agenda. So the way that the Sustainable Development Goal number 4 could actually be the driver of all other Sustainable Development Goals. And it's a very nice book because it really brings evidence that education, if implemented for education's sake, then it will deliver results much further than it would have done if not. If we implement education policies for labor market needs, then it will not deliver just as much as it would if we would do it for education's sake. Because if we implement education on its own, then it will bring societal change, personal development of all learners and teachers. It would bring better jobs, which is a very nice byproduct of education, but it should not be the only end of education. Education is there first and foremost for personal development, and a very good reading that I would definitely advise.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Moving on to Fatima, because we're in a bit of a delay. Fatima, if in your opinion, what concrete policy recommendation can be implemented on a national, as Andrea was saying, or European, if it's a recommendation, to ensure that mental health and inclusion go hand in hand in school environments?
I'll try and make it quick because I also realize we're short on time. I do have like a massive list of recommendations, which doesn't help, but I also know we're going to be talking about the policy brief for this project later on. So I'm sure many of that will be covered there. Before I forget, I want to start off by saying that firstly, we need a European mental health strategy, a comprehensive strategy that really encompasses many of the things we've touched on. So I say that because mental health is impacted by our socioeconomic environments. And so we need to tackle the root causes, which is often barriers at societal level, to improve mental health for all. And by doing that, we then, funnel that into all areas, including education. We need a strategy because we need specific approaches with clear indicators and benchmarks, and a push for strategies at national levels as well. So a comprehensive approach across European, national and regional levels is essential. And here we need to also include a focus area on communities in vulnerable situations, but also looking at education as well and educational environments. And this is important because it really does impact where funding goes and where attention is paid. So I wanted to start off by that. Secondly, I wanted to highlight that it's really important that we increase our mental health literacy. This is so important because stigma and discrimination really impacts where we are in terms of access to support, and also, attitudes towards mental health and when support is needed. So here, training is important for professionals, but also for students. And there also needs to be an open communication and dialogue around mental health. So, shouldn't just be a 1 hour session where we talk about this is mental health and that's it. But we need to go beyond that in terms of mental health is impacted by many factors, and we need to constantly include it in our education, as well as looking into support as well. So one of the challenges, for example, in school environments that I see is, there are mental health professionals sometimes, but there could be, for example, one mental health professional for hundreds of students. So this is not feasible, even in terms of remembering names, let alone actually providing quality and tailored support. So there needs to be more done in terms of connecting to mental health services and bringing in kind of a holistic cross-sectoral approach when we talk about providing adequate mental health support for children, but also for staff, etc. Something else I wanted to mention, which is linked to this, is the importance of bringing in community-based services and the education environment. So this is really important because community-based organizations that, for example, are representative of migrants can really play an important role in supporting schools to be more inclusive and more, a safer space for children, but also families. So I won't dwell into it too much, but it is very important that we look at third spaces like youth centers, and other areas where individuals occupy that are in education. So alongside this, I wanted to highlight the importance of strengthening collaboration amongst key stakeholders. So this is teachers, it could be school administrators, families, and wider communities. And here I've seen great examples where in schools there are sessions held based off of needs of students, families, and wider communities. It could be, for example, sessions explaining how the school system works and how individuals can be better involved. So, for example, participating in school committees, boards, etc., which could be really helpful for individuals to better support from all angles, whether it's, providing recommendations to teachers and head school teachers, but also actually being part of the process in shaping schools to be better. And often migrants and migrant children aren't aware of this. I know I didn't know about this until I was already an adult, which is unfortunate. And this is something I try to do also within my community to better involve parents, because they miss out on some of the crucial components of what education can include in the classroom, but also outside. And then I want to also highlight the importance of support for the supporters. So you mentioned that it's important for teachers to actually be able to teach, and I totally agree with that. And knowing many teachers, I understand some of the stresses and the challenges that they face. And unfortunately, I know a few who completely left education because of this pressure. So we need to do better in terms of providing support and care for staff. And in terms of training, you know, also providing long-term and continuous training, which, you know, alongside that, allowing for spaces for staff to also have informal discussions in terms of what could be better done to support them, and also within the classroom settings. I'm going to stop here, but I just wanted to touch on one last point in terms of, you know, comprehensive education for everyone involved is essential, because a big issue is labeling. So students who are struggling being given a label in terms of them being disruptive or, you know, not engaged. And this can span from teachers all the way to students, which could, from the early stages, already bring in exclusion. So before students even leave education, you know, oftentimes they're placed in isolation. So, you know, completely segregated from their other classmates. And that all starts from attitudes and, you know, labels being placed on them. So I think this is something that, you know, should perhaps include more of a discussion, but something that I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima, so much for bringing up such fundamental points. And Mujib, with you, we're gonna try and focus on legislative and institutional changes, starting from what Andrea has told us already. What do you think, in the perspective of MPG, are the most impactful legislative and institutional changes that we need in ensuring equal educational opportunities for migrant and refugee children and pupils?
Thank you. Just to build up on what was already mentioned, yeah, I also came with a list of recommendations on how to change this policy landscape.
We're gonna write them down, don't worry.
But anyways, you know, within Serious Watch, we are collecting data from the member states. And one simple question is that, do you have a national, well-defined strategy to include migrants and to address their problems? Simply, many states have education strategy, but not a strategy which addresses the needs of migrants. And that is a very fundamental thing. When we look at our migration population, we should have a strategy to address their challenges. And this simple question is challenging for many member states. And I think from there, we have to look at institutional structures. If in the curriculum, we have a well curriculum which reflect on diversity, because from social sciences, from political science perspectives, we know that when students and peoples from different backgrounds are exposed to diversity, they are more interactive, they are more open-minded, and they accept diversity and other students and pupils within these institutions. And even when we look at teachers and the findings, although these are initials, but it indicates in several member states the curriculum or in higher education is also not reflecting diversity. And then the teachers have problem when they talk with those people who have a migration background, when it comes to offer psychological support. Yeah, we know it from the debate in national debates that migrants are portrayed as burden on the society, as a threat, and usually, for example, just to keep this psychological support, they don't want to be labeled as mentally ill. not to be presented as a security threat, not to be presented as a burden on the society. And there we also need reflections and structured programs to address not only the needs of migrants, but also something to fulfill the experiences and needs of teachers. Yeah, I think these are like on the national level, we need a strategy to address the challenges and the needs of migrant population. Then we also need to reflect on the needs of the teachers. And then maybe at a very lower level, we should pay attention to migrant students and migrant peoples, that what do they need. And as already mentioned, this is a multi-layered approach, and probably this will be important when there is when recommendations are based on research, when recommendations are based on evidence. This could be effective when it comes at EU level, that we have these gaps, and even to borrow from the discussion currently in Germany, when it was coming to criminality and radicalization of Afghans. One thing which was missing was actually the support, like psychosocial support, which is not provided. And when there is a need, I think policymakers act according to public opinion, as well as when there is a dire need. And this can impact legislation at EU level as well as a national level. And that is my take on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mujib. Moving on to our last intervention by Pieter. The question that I would like to ask you is, how can we, and based on what Fatima was telling us before, how can we ensure that teachers and parents work together to ensure an inclusive strategy that help children, especially those that have emotional development difficulties, relating to online life and online risks? I know that you're doing a research on this, so if you would like to give us your take on this, would be fantastic.
I will try, and just give a heads up when my time is up, because I could talk about this all day. I'm going to do two things. One, answer your question, but shorter. And second of all, an example of what all of you've been saying, and some that triggered some things in my mind. And I think it's really practical thing how teachers can cope with all those things, something that we try to do within our college. First of all, indeed, the digital world is a challenge at its own, I think. The challenge there for teachers and parents and children, all of us, I think, is how fast it's moving, how fast it's changing, and all the things that happen. COVID has some acceleration did some acceleration that all of a sudden, all of us all the children were online, and the teachers were online, and mental health became some obscure thing because we didn't see them anymore. We don't have the connection, the face-to-face connection. Let's speak for myself. Face-to-face connection is something I really missed, and if I have a chance, I don't do online meetings again. I just do face-to-face meetings. Don't always have the chance, but if I have. The big thing in this, the big mind shift, I think, for teachers, parents, exactly those generations, let's say, the children, they do that mind shift from its own, is that the digital world and the offline online world is one world. I grew up in a separate world. I had also a big computer at in my room. When I plugged it out or when I just shut it off, I was offline. Nowadays, all the things happen. It start online, goes on offline, it goes further online, etc. And that's why, for example, cyberbullying and online sexual harassment is so intrusive, because it never stops. So those are a really big challenge and how to deal with it. For teachers, it's really difficult to see and understand. And of course, from emotional development standpoint, understanding those difficulties is the first step, I think. And from research, the next thing, but that's really an attitude. Going to go further into the attitudes in a moment. But it's in essence, a mind shift for us. In a sense that all our interventions we know in the face-to-face teaching or face-to-face social work, etc., can be applicable online. It's in a sense and the same thing. It's a little black and white that I'm setting it here, but it's the same thing. You just have to adapt a little bit for the online thing, in the sense that when we have an online conversation, I have to think about it that I'm not looking at the camera, but I'm looking at my screen and we're not looking in each other's eyes. Those are some adjustments we have to take, but the way you're interacting with the person, you already have those capabilities as a social worker or as a teacher. So you should be able to use them. It's not as easy, and that's why I think teachers and professionals need a framework to work with it. In our research, we saw that it's a really difficult leap to take for some teachers and some professionals because of the mindset that, okay, it's online, I don't know it, it's not for me. I don't know TikTok, I don't want to know TikTok, but all my students are on TikTok. That's just what it is. Instagram, Facebook is for generations. I'm 40 plus, so 40 plus generation is Facebook. Below Facebook, what is Facebook? So that's something we see and we come into contact with. And the mistake I think professionals make is that we try to understand all those social media and try to be able to do the same. In my opinion, that's not the case, what we should do. It's not that I don't know TikTok, that I can guide you to the problems that you have on TikTok. What's important is communication, like I said. I'm just going to, in a sense, ask what you're doing, and the youth will explain it more than we will ever be able to do what they are doing online. And then we can see the same difficulties that are existing in an offline, let's say cyberbullying or bullying. So those same dynamics, exact the same dynamics. The only problem is for the online aspect of it, it's just going on when you get home, when you go to sleep. Nowadays, okay, your phone is your computer and you have your phone in your room. Yeah, you will be, if you have a chance to keep being bullied. In the offline, when I get home, the bullying stops, or in the weekend, the bullying stops. Still, bullying is not okay, never okay, but at least there's some breathing point at the same. So giving those teachers some help in adjusting in that framework, and therefore I think I can send it to you. We devised a framework on how to really practical work with those digital challenges for a teacher or a social worker. So really hands-on practical things on how you should do it from an emotional development standpoint. And the last thing, the example I would like to give, because I really like that you say mental health, attitude, and how, etc. Of course, I'm biased in the sense that I've been a social worker. I'm teaching students to be a social worker, so that's my background. So I'm biased in that way, but I think attitude is the first and last and main component of it. In a way that I believe, and I'm sure because I've experienced it firsthand, and it is something that developed during my career, that when your attitude is a good one, saying be open-minded, listening, be able to look at the perspectives from the other people, be there someone from migrant background or someone from a really vulnerable situation, it doesn't mind just stepping into those shoes and trying to understand, not understanding at all because I have another background, but trying to understand those emotions that comes with it, that we have that attitude, then we can use every methodology that there is, and we're going to use it in a correct way, rather than just teaching methodologies and interventions. And if we don't have that attitude, we're going to do a lot of worse things, I think, to youth. And the way we in our higher education try to do it, and that's the example I'm going to give, is experiential learning. I've love to hear you say that Our classroom hasn't changed during the last 100 years, and indeed, it hasn't. So we try to do with the experiential learning, go outside the classroom. And one example, a couple of years, we do this in May each year. I do it with 2 classes. We go off a week, go into the nature, we go to visit organizations. They have to do research, and they do have to search organizations based on those research questions. And we had a couple of people in our class who were really involved in the mosque in their home town. So one of the things we did, we visited the mosque. It was a really beautiful mosque, and the father and the grandfather of the girl were chanting prayers as an example and teaching us what is it to be in a mosque and how does it go on. We did this whole experience. Afterwards, the father said, "I want to buy you something for dinner." The daughter said, "Yes, that's my father. That's just who he is." We say, "Okay, that's nice. Well, let's do that." And then we see how difficult it is for some people to understand those things and understand different cultures. There was one guy, a really great guy, but he wanted to give something back at that moment. The people around us and the people from Moscow, that's not necessary. We're just doing this out of the good of our hearts. It's okay. It's okay. Then we have the typical maybe Flemish background to say, no, if you give me something, I have to give you something back. We've talked about it 2 weeks in a row, I think. He still wanted to give something back. But for me, it's not polite to not do that. It's okay, but it's not necessary. We're not giving you something because we want something in return. We're just giving you something because it's just nice that you're doing this. Just something. It's just who I am. Acknowledge that. A little bit back and forward. The weeks after that, just give them some reflection to the students. Just think about the things you're saying. We came up with maybe we can give something in a change. Not we just buy you a drink. That's not really that. But what did we experience there? What did we learn from that experience? We write it down and we give it to the father, so he can see if what was this, what I did, what did it bring forward. And that is just something from the experience learning, just give students something to reflect on. And in a sense, I think it was a month later that they give those papers to the father, and the response was, "Oh, nice, that was what happened when we did those things." And I think that's something teachers can implement and give a lot of knowledge, because that for me it's attitude and looking at how the situation is.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. It was a beautiful discussion. I think we're gonna try and get some quotes for you so we can actually make something come out of this discussion, except for the discussion itself. So I'm gonna leave the floor to Soha for, well, yeah, of course. I'm gonna leave the floor to Soha for the presentation of the policy toolkit, and then we're gonna have a little break. So hang on. Thank you again.
So as I told you this morning, the project Enable comes to its end by the end of this month. And during the 2 years and a half that we worked on it, we developed some tools. And I will explain to you briefly about those tools just to get to the recommendation parts that, thanks to our key speakers, were very similar to what you already shared with us. And it shows how we are on the same wave and in our approach. So for the first work package, actually, or first result that we worked on was a mapping of good practices. We started from making a state of the art of what's happening around the world, of practices that take into account the path or the migration pathway of the children, and how they can work on social and emotional learning within the school context. So the idea was to make a mapping of good practices from mainly the partners countries that I presented this morning, from Italy, from Greece, Turkey, France, and Belgium, and also to go a little bit abroad like in other European countries and also some MENA countries, to check what's happening there. What are the policies? What are the researchers? What are the methods that have been implemented in these countries working on social emotional learning and targeting the migrant children? So after doing this, I will not go into all of them, but I will show you one example. Let's go to Sweden. And you can go on each one of them and then you can check them. You can go to the website and check what have been done and check also the results. Mainly, we have also European projects financed by Erasmus Plus program, that have been identified within this mapping matrix. So I will be back. So once we did this state of the arts, we started working on an online training program that is addressed to school teachers and headmasters. And it was based on what we also discovered, like what is the need, what are the needs on the basic, on the local levels in different countries. So we developed 5 modules. Let's go to the English one. That goes from what you say, Peter, was very interesting when you concluded about the intercultural differences and how we can understand or sometimes don't understand, why we don't understand what is happening with the person coming from different culture. So we really wanted to work on the intercultural education, because it's something that we face when we have many children in our classrooms and they are coming from different culture. We are trying to get along all the ideas and all the differences, but sometimes it's difficult when we don't know about this intercultural education. So the idea was to talk about it, to explain what is culture, what is identity, what are stereotypes, prejudice and discrimination. So to have a clearer idea about this this intercultural education. And then we also introduced social and emotional learning, which is a big part of our project. That is a concept mainly that was developed like before in the North American countries like Canada and USA, and it starts to come bit by bit to Europe and other countries. And we decided to talk about it, to introduce it in our learning model. The third model was about building trauma-informed schools. So in this model, we also talked about trauma and how we can identify some behaviors related to trauma among the children that we have in classrooms. We are not tackling this this subject from professional approach, which means we are not psychiatrists, we are not psychologists, but we are trying just to make awareness about this topic and to say, okay, if a child is behaving in a somehow different way that you are expecting him to behave, it's there's something maybe is related to trauma and to his migration path. And also we wanted to put highlights on the family and community engagement, because the child, even if he's spending a lot of time at school, but there's also all the surrounding or the learning environments that are complementary to the school environment, which are family, wider community, that should be taken into consideration when we will tackle the mental health of the child. And finally, the fifth model, I will go back, sorry. It's in Italian. Yeah, I'm put it now. Yes, it's about the aspects of trauma-informed educational practices. And here we go back to how to build a supportive classroom environments, how we can support the school teachers as headmasters to be to have a school that is trauma-informed and an inclusive one. And finally, when we finalized this toolkit, no, training program. The final result was to create a toolkit based on the research that we did and the learning models that we developed. And in the toolkit, we decided to make it divided into 6 domains, plus an extra one, especially with the policy recommendation. In this policy toolkit, we decided to make it theoretical but also practical, to give ready activities to be implemented in classrooms with the teachers, or also for training of the teacher. Because as I said this morning, it's in our project, we really want to reinforce the capacities of the teachers to have this inclusive classroom environments. So we have in this toolkit, and we will send you, of course, the link so you can access it freely on our website, theoretical part to talk about what is trauma-informed practices, what is the profile of the trauma-informed teachers, and then you will have practical part with activities that can be settled directly in classrooms. And the most the part that we would like also to present to you today is our recommendation, the policy recommendation that we developed, because we wanted to tackle 4 different levels of target groups or stakeholders, starting from the teachers working directly with migrant women, migrant children, refugees, and displaced children, students. We elaborated 4 recommendations for them. The first one is to integrate trauma awareness and emotional literacy into classroom practices, like to encourage open discussions and emotion about and self-regulation for the children. It's when we put words on what we are feeling about, it's much more easier to deal with it. It's much more easier to be taken into consideration. So we really encourage the teachers to integrate this literacy in the classrooms. We also would like to recommend that they use restorative approaches in addressing behavioral challenges, which mean when we are when we put focus and we understand the root of the causes of the behavior, it will be much easier to deal with it, and not to reduce to punitive processes when the children are not responding to what we are asking them to do in the classroom. The third one is to establish clear routines and predictable classroom procedures, which mean when we and you talked about Fatima, it's not about doing one session of empathetic exercises. It's about routine. It should be really installed in the classroom environment. It should be like the children should know that if they are doing something wrong, they will not be punished for that, but there will be an activity that will help them regulate their emotions. And that's something that will last in time. Encourage positive peer relationship and inclusive group activities. So also here we have the role of peer education. We are in a classroom, we are children, and sometimes the children are not very nice among them. So we really need to install this peer nice relationship, let's say. And then we go to the schools and school leaders, because they have also an important role in integrating this trauma-informed approach. I will not read them all because I know that we are over time, but really we really need to focus that on their role in installing this trauma-sensitive school policies, and how to support the school teachers in their role of being supportive for the children. And then we go to the national stakeholders, which is ministries, municipalities, education departments. And you know, education is not a competence of the European Union. Each national state has his own national system, national programs. So what we would like to do is that these national programs should take into consideration a trauma-informed approach while preparing them. And also to make some funding, special fundings for the program that emphasis on the empathy on social emotional learning also. And the last level, which is the most global level, let's say, it's a European level, European stakeholders, European Commission, European Education Area and Council of Europe, because even if it's not a competence of the European Union, but there are some programs and funding that are related to education, and we would like that those programs take into consideration the social emotional learning for migrant children. I will stop here. We will have time to discuss over the coffee break if you would like to. And you can also get these documents on our website, enable-europe.org, where you can find it in all the partners' languages and in English, of course. Thank you for listening. And please enjoy the coffee break.
Everyone's attention. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed your coffee break. So we're gonna move on to the next phase of our event, which is the World Cafe. We have decided, since the discussion that we had this morning with our speakers was very productive and very interchangeable, we have decided to have a collective restitution. So one table of the World Cafe in which we're gonna get into the topics that we have decided to get into today, which are European policy on migrants and this is your institution. So the first table is going to be creating safe and inclusive learning environments, which is going to be facilitated by Maria. Strengthening school community collaboration, which is going to be facilitated by Andrea. Mental health and well-being support in schools, which is going to be facilitated by Fatima. And European policies regarding migrant and refugee children, which is going to be facilitated by Mujib. So what we're going to do is, if you could help me with this, it would be great. We're going to have a circle of chairs, and we're going to have a big discussion on these 4 topics. We're going to have 15 to 20 minutes for each topic. And you're going to have the possibility to ask questions and participate in the discussion with our 4 experts on these areas. So if we could make a circle, it would be great. Thank you. So while we do this, I'm going to just give you a brief introduction on what the World Cafe technique is and what the objective is, which is to exchange knowledge and practical solution to enhance the integration and well-being of migrant and refugee children in schools. And the facilitator role is going to be the one to ask questions and give tips, since, as you may have noticed, every facilitator is facilitating his or her area of expertise. So we're going to have the possibility to ask questions and make a great discussion about this, and to take notes that the facilitator is going to take, and have a nice outcome with this discussion. So whenever you want to start, maybe we could start with Andrea's table. What do you think, Andrea? Make sense?
Thank you very much. And my table, or rather this topic of discussion, is strengthening school community collaboration. So this is something that we touched upon this morning quite a lot. We talked about the importance of a community that revolves around schools. We talked about the importance of strengthening the relation between the school and its own community. And the 4 speakers talked at length about it. So now we want to hear from you. It's time to come up with your own experience, with your own challenges, with your own possible solutions, and see if we can find something that works for everyone. So the floor is yours. What are the challenges that you see in your daily life in bringing together the school and the community, and what possible solutions do you have? We have a mic. We're also not a large crowd, so we can make this journey.
I'm Antti from Greece, and one part of my job is teaching in a primary school. So I want to share my views there. So in Greece, there is a certain situation with schools and parents. Sometimes, unfortunately, many times, school teachers and the parents association are not, it's like they have, they don't cooperate, they work together. It's like one teachers have to defend them in front of the parents, and parents are asking more and more it's time. So the climate is not very well in this situation, and if the climate is not well, they cannot cooperate well, and this is something very bad, because for me it's very important to cooperate with parents. So this is one challenge that we are facing. And now concerning the migrant children, it's also the challenge that we cannot communicate well, and we don't have the means to communicate. I mean, we don't have some help from government, like a translator on something. So we have students that come in our schools and they don't speak Greek, yet they don't speak English as well. So me as a teacher, I often use Google Translate in order to come close to these children. And this, for me, these are the two key challenges that we face in schools, at least at my school in Greece.
Can I have follow-up questions?
Yes.
Why do you think there's this tension between parents associations and teachers?
In my opinion, it started years ago when we have the financial crisis in Greece, where the social workers like us, the people working for the government, were considered to be the lucky ones, whereas all the others were not so lucky, not having stable salaries like this. And this started at that time, and then parents have started demanding from us. And there are a lot of parents who understand our work, and they are super happy, and they are very supportive. But there are many cases where we cannot work efficiently together with parents. I see it in many schools. It depends on, sometimes it depends on where the school is located, because schools that are located in the center of the cities have more migrant people than local ones. So there is also the communication issues between them, and you cannot have efficient cooperation. It depends on the status of parents as well. So when you are in a place where rich people are located, they also tend to ask for many things, and not have a good cooperation with schools.
Okay, that's clear. And if you had a magic wand, what would you change? So we can go towards a solution to the challenges.
What I would change is I would add love in the school environment, because for me, children learn with love. So I would add a lot of love. Mm.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for sharing. Anyone else feels this is a reliable challenge?
I guess you hear me. Yeah, much better. Thank you. I guess it's also challenging in our case in Turkey, as because of the some other issues, priorities for the community members. They don't have time to allocate to meet the teachers within an interaction with the school. It's always another workload that they have to be priority for the target group of this project. Sometimes we have to push them to visit the schools, to be in an interaction with the parties, dealing with the training, the education process of their children. If I would have a magic in my hand, I would prefer to change the law first, because there must be an allocated time in each week, which would be compulsory for the parents to visit the schools to be together with the teachers, with the management board, to check their progress for their children in the school. As they have to work in different kinds of work placements, and the priority is to own their own business or any employment, so they don't have enough time to allocate to care of their children. It would be unfortunate. It must be voluntary-based activity to visit, to be enthusiastic to check the situation of their children in the school, but unfortunately it doesn't work in this way in a voluntary base. So it must be a kind of a compulsory task, and also a permission from the side of the workplace to be given to the parents to visit schools in a separate and allocated time in each week. Another thing would be change in the side of the policy making side, also the side of the school. There must be enough time allocated to each teacher to be together with the parents in each week. There must be some separate times, lessons maybe allocated for the teachers to be together with the parents to check the situation, the progress, because it's also another workload to be covered, also needs another vegetarian support from the side of the government to release to the teachers, because it will take, let's say, if you have 30 students, that you have to be responsible in the school for a teacher, which means that you need at least, let's say, maybe half day, at least half day to allocate just to deal with the children, to interact with the parents. Unfortunately, we have to annual meetings in each year, in each term, one meeting that every parent has to visit school in a separate day, not in the weekdays, because of the works for the teachers, for the parents that they have to be in the weekdays. In each term, we have a separate Sunday allocated to invite parents to the school to be together with the teachers to check in different slots, to visit the classes, to be together with the teachers to check. But it's not enough. Most of the parents don't prefer to visit the school because they have also a limited number of Sundays that they have to get a little bit relaxed. They don't prefer in general to spend in schools. So in the side of the governmental side, there must be some compulsory tasks for the schools and allocate time for the teachers, and it must be the same also in the side of the parents, that they have to spend a separate time in the school.
And do you feel that this disengagement by parents is a problem for the school, because then they complain, they critique, they have hard feelings without knowing what's going on?
I have the level of comfort. I have seen some unique examples with the European Parents Association in Netherlands. Was managed very good. The parents are more interested because they are also the member of the management board. They are also deciding, as because of the school-based authorization in the schools, they are allowed to decide also some part of the curriculum to be released in each year in the school. They are more authorized with different kinds of not only tasks, also for the obligation, also for the authorization. They are able to decide also in some of the specific needs in the school process in each year. But it doesn't work in this way, in this kind of centralized authorization, in our case in Turkey, also in most of the countries, same. So all school has a separate identity, authorization for the side of the school, for the side of the parents. They have to be pushed to be responsible for the process of the education of the, not only the curriculum, also of the management.
I'm familiar with the European Parents Association and the fact that parents have different roles, even formal roles sometimes in some European countries. And then it's not always the case for everyone else. Thank you for sharing. Yes. Right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Okay, so
Thank you very much to everyone. I just wanted to say one thing. If you don't speak in the microphone, the people connected can't hear you. So we're gonna pass the microphone around. No, that was my mistake. I should have told you. But let's pass the microphone around so people can hear you and ask questions and make comments. And maybe on this last remark, I was thinking we could let Maria maybe ask a couple of questions on her topic, which I think connects really well with what we just said. What do you think, Maria?
yeah, so my topic is safe and inclusive learning environments. I think that we have already mentioned that learning does not happen in schools only. And Angie mentioned that children learn with love. Another factor which is connected, of course, to love is safety and sense of belonging. There are many times that we realize that what children learn at school or what they experience at school is very different from what they experience in their communities or in their homes. And this creates a kind of cultural discontinuity, which presents as an obstacle for their safety and therefore their learning. So I would like to focus on what we can do, what challenges there are, first of all, to create these safe and inclusive learning environments for migrant and refugee students in schools, but not only. And what could we do to improve this aspect? Would anyone like to start? You.
Sorry. Yeah, you are right. Do you hear me now? Yeah, I guess. We are trying to use social activities as effective as possible in the schools, and also we are trying to promote those kind of activities to be used more effectively in the schools. There are several social clubs to be activated, especially for the inclusive purposes. Another option is to be used effectively to voluntary-based activities in the community. When we are trying to motivate the members in the clubs in the schools, we are trying to compensate the participants in the clubs to include also the migrated individuals in the classes to be actively taking roles in the responsibilities in the clubs. For example, let's say we have a social responsibility club visiting elderly care home services in different institutions in the region. So they are going to be involved in this kind of clubs to visit, to get more interactive, to interact with the different kinds of peers, different kinds of dynamics in the community. So this allows them to be more feeling to be belonging to the community. So according to my experience, the clubs are more useful in this case. And also the volunteer-based activities has a kind of magical contribution, this kind of process to get them more integrated to the community, to the rest of the classmates in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Can. Anyone else would like to? Sure.
Okay, so there are many things that we can do, but I want to share one thing that in my 20 years as a teacher, I saw that it really worked. Was the buddy system, like what we do in some schools, and it really works all the time, is that, for example, in primary schools, you allocate a student from the 6th grade, a newcomer child in the first grade. So the first grader feels that whenever they need something, they have the big kid to help them or to assist them. And it works better than going to the teachers, because the teachers are, for the small children, a little bit more difficult to reach, or they feel so. So if we could use this buddy system for MRD children coming to schools, I think it would work perfect for them.
I would also like to mention another good practice we used in our regional directorate. Actually, we spread MRD students to many schools. We're not only to one, in order to avoid creating a ghetto. So these all kids, since they were spread, they were in touch with local kids, so that helped him to learn the Greek language, even if
They had great difficulties in this. So when some kids started to learn the Greek language, they helped the others, the smallest, the newest. So it was a kind of solution. Also, we had NGOs, many volunteers, and other people who helped, who had lessons for adults. Sorry for this. Social workers made a great job, we have to mention that. And actually, there's no magic button or Tinkerbell to solve this problem. It needs time, needs effort, and most of all, willingness and conscious.
I wanted to add a point around safe and inclusive learning because I think someone mentioned a point around kind of our understanding, actually you did, of education. And I think that's a super interesting point because at least from my community, I'm Somali, and schools are really looked at as like a second home. And parents often have an association of the traditional sit down and learn when it comes to education, when in fact it should be an exchange. So there isn't really a role seen for students, but also families in shaping the environment. So I think it would be quite interesting to look at practices which can help everyone from starting at the same foundation in terms of how do we understand schools, how can we contribute, and how can we shape it to be more inclusive. And that could be, for example, having sessions, talks, exchanges, and really challenging maybe mindsets when it comes to learning. And the second point I was going to make was around parents' evenings and discussions, exchanges between teachers and students, no, teachers and parents, because oftentimes actually there is a translator and that's usually the student. So how can there be effective communication that's not skewed so that the teacher and the parent or the guardian can better build a rapport and relationship that's separate from the student, whether that's having a translator, whether that's having, you know, interactions other than parents' evenings, which is unfortunately usually the case. You know, what could be better implemented in schools. So.
Yeah, just I'd like to just make a little contribution from South Korea because my colleague and I, we are very much happy to be here. Yeah, we are just visiting to study the European efforts and then maybe some national efforts to integrate students. Yes, we have NGO background and then we go to schools with the refugees to talk about their experiences as refugee in their own countries and then in Korea. And then we've been doing this for now 7 years, including this year, working together, maybe 20 refugees working together to do this. And we go to school from primary to even kindergarten to university level. And then all questions we receive from the audience, I say, actually are same, pretty much same from kindergarten to university. Like we don't really receive upgraded questions. And then the question we often get is that the food. I think so. I think it reflects Korean culture. We care about your well-being. We ask, "How are you?" Instead of "How are you?" say like, "Have you eaten?" Yes. So this is our "How are you?" and "Hi." Yes. So and then some refugees they say like they were offended when they received this question because why do you take pity on me, you know? But this is our culture, and somehow, and now in Korea, like our public schools and even private, they provide like meals, and this is really important in Korean education system. And somehow Korean culture is kind of homogeneous, and then Koreans eat everything. And but everything, yeah, we love every food. But so we don't understand why you don't eat this food. Yes, maybe you have allergy, we understand. But then culturally, religiously, you don't prefer to eat this food. We don't get it. And we ask why you don't make efforts to adjust yourself to new culture or to explore new things. Yes, but now this time of the year is Ramadan now, and children maybe are very sleepy in classroom because they were up at night. Maybe they are skipping meals. And then school, like neutrologist, I can say, they care about why they don't eat my food. Yeah, and so according to all like diet, nutrition. Yeah, and then they're sleeping, and then parents do not receive phone call. Yes. So yeah, this creates like some headaches in school, to each class, and then to the headmaster, everyone. But then, but they somehow ended up like, but this is an individual problem. Maybe you have a children with allergy. They know how to do this. They know what to eat, what to not eat. Maybe they bring some alternative foods prepared by parents. Like, then why don't they do this? Just they skip instead of skipping meals. But somehow it doesn't work that way. And then so even so somehow, but anyway, they ask these kind of things, and then and we sometimes it creates complaints, a lot of complaints from teachers. And then, but somehow we try to have some discussion among students instead of giving a solution to teachers or giving advice to teachers or to headmaster. And then there was one school in a city, wealthy city anyway. But then in grade 2 in middle school, probably like 15 years old. In two groups, we discussed, and then one refugee was sitting here too, to give an advice, to give a piece of advice to them when they need it. And then they somehow, students, they create all the solutions. They know what to do actually. Really, they say like, we already have a different diets, like our preferences, like then why we make our class, student and school meals like more diverse more diverse. And then maybe create like like a special day to introduce some cuisine from another country. Yeah, like this adult refugee came to our school to talk about their story. Then how about we listen to them. So somehow that school never had a refugee student yet, even until today. But somehow supposedly they kind of like I said like first time they say like we welcome them or become friends like normally. But then when I asked that, but there's a like clash and then some maybe headache problem, and then maybe language problem in the school. Maybe teachers will speak slowly because of one student. Can you bear it? Because in Korea so competitive. So and then they somehow support, they discuss, and then they came up with a lot of creative solutions. I think we have to invite actually students into this dialogue if we want to create really safe and inclusive space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so all what you shared is very connected to what we mean by inclusion, because many times we talk about inclusion and what we mean is integration. So we wait for others that come to a country to integrate into, to adapt into the system and do not value their cultures. We do not put effort into understanding and valuing their cultural systems, but we only put effort to integrate them into ours. So I think that, and from my experience, what is really effective is if you show people that you want them to become members of your community, but you also want to change your cultural environment to make it more inclusive in general and to make it more welcoming for them, and to give value to their specific cultural practices and anything that they might contribute to your environment as well. I've taking down a lot of notes because everything you shared is very, very, very interesting. But maybe we can go back to it later on, and we can continue with our third topic.
Yes, because I also saw that Fatima wanted to intervene, and I think it connects really well with the mental health aspects of integration and inclusion, as Maria said. And so maybe we can get a little bit into that. What do you think, Fatima?
Yes, that sounds great. Yeah, I wanted to open up the discussion around mental health and well-being and supports in schools, and to hear a bit more about your experience or your understanding when it comes to the challenges around mental health, and also possible interventions or solutions that you can share. Just to let you know, I'm going to be typing, so I'm not ignoring. So if you hear me typing away, I'm noting down your contributions. So I want to open up the floor in case anyone has any thoughts. And before doing so, to keep in mind that we've talked about how teachers have a lot of pressure in terms of them wearing so many hats, in terms of being the teacher, the parental figure, the guider, and also the individual that looks out for any signs of distress in students. And at the same time, students can also have a lot of hats. So, especially students, migrant students, they are in class as students, but at home they might be administrators, translators, and especially older siblings. They also have a unique experience in terms of looking out for their community and younger siblings. So what can you suggest? What are some of the challenges and what are some of the solutions that you'd like to share, or any insight? It would be super insightful. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Clara Nagy. I come from Hungary. I work for a research institute, and we are leading some educational projects. And in that, we have the task of impact assessments usually. But right now, I'm not speaking from this hat, actually. I was just thinking, because also the discussion covered that point that teachers teach by example. It's their attitude what is really important to shape also the community, the students around them. So I don't know if when we talk about mental health at schools, do we also cover mental health of the teachers? Because speaking of Hungary, what we are facing, it's a very serious educational crisis, starting from the lack of teachers, but also the administrative burdens that they face in the educational system. It's it's not the ideal environment for teachers to be really the actors of change. And I think during these discussions in the morning, we put a lot of pressure on teachers. I mean, I really do believe that it's one of the most important vocations, but can we really support them, and by what means? And I cannot offer the solutions, but I do think that we should start with the teachers, maybe.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
I'd like to add something. Can you hear me? Yes. So one of the challenges we face, at least in Greece, I think, is that mental health is still a taboo. Like people do not talk about it so much. So it's very difficult because still in schools, although we of course have much lack of resources, we do not have psychologists in all schools still, and even if we have, families mostly do not really want to address such issues. Like they do not want to confess that the children come from challenging environments. While this topic is still a taboo, I don't think that we can really make many things about it.
I just have a question because we've seen over the last couple of years more attention on mental health. Have you heard or noticed a positive impact or maybe even a challenge in terms of misunderstandings in the educational environment?
I think that my colleagues who are more involved in schools can better answer, but yeah, sure.
Okay, so what I have noticed in the schools that I have been is that when parents are more educated, let's say, they have a better education, they are more open on helping their children facing mental issues, but psychological issues. But parents not educated enough, they think it is a taboo. I mean, they are defensive over everyone, and they don't understand that how to help their child. They hide things from school, and this way school cannot address the issue. I mean, we see problems. Parents do not want to admit them, and while we are contacting parents in order to help the child, because the main issue is the child and how it will feel better inside the school environment, because they don't want to show that there is a problem, they are eager not to help their child, so that they hide this problem under the blanket, let's say. And this is something that is very sad. I mean, you see a child that needs support, you see the need, and you cannot help because you're not, you cannot help if the family does not help you, help their child.
Maybe a brief intervention here, Fatima. I didn't know that facilitators can also intervene. Well, in school settings, often we are not talking about such post-migration stressors openly, and that is a problem. When it comes to interpreters, language barriers, even some families are not ready to have an interpreter from the same community. You know, there is this socio-cultural understanding of such problems that not to be labeled as mentally ill or as a threat. And I think at school settings, this needs to be discussed. You know, the teachers need to discuss that. The teachers need to be trained on this, what migrants experience post-migration and other things that the first part of our discussion I mentioned, like bullying and verbal violence, all this should be prevented. And that's why many peoples, they don't trust the teachers to share their stories and the burden that they carry.
What we have seen in Greece is that when parents admit that there is a problem, half of it is already solved.
I had to sit for a second and dwell on that. You're so right. I want to pose a question, a general question for anyone who can share an answer. What strategies can schools use to support the mental health of students in terms of resilience? Are there any good practices that you can share?
Maybe they can help to find external supports through, for example, experts. And for example, in Italy, we have a lot of problem about this. We can take seriously the mental health, especially in the education system. So maybe the best way to face this kind of phenomenon then to try to help the new students to facilitate the introduction of a new class. And at the same time, I suppose that for teachers it's very tough. I mean, they have to do everything, so it's very, I mean, impossible to have different expertise. For this reason, in my opinion, it's very important to have support from expertise even in the class. Maybe it's going to be a good way to try to help the students to facilitate the integration at school.
Thank you. Just to build up on this, I think the school settings need also to cooperate with external actors. We have good examples, although Finland, we referred to Finland this morning, and Finland, there's one organization which offers such services, and the schools are working together. This was just, I was going through the findings of our series watch. And I think sometimes, as I mentioned, the first part, the students, the pupils cannot trust the school settings and even the pedagogues or psychologists over there, and they go and seek external support. But there should be a kind of mechanism between these two, the school settings and external support, to overcome the challenge more properly and more effectively.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I will just give you an example from France, because when we presented the project in many schools on the local level, the first thing the teacher said, we don't have time to do that. Like, I mean, in their curriculum, they are over booked and overloaded, that they don't have like the possibility to integrate something outside this curriculum, from outside. And when they do, they are looked at from the other teachers as extraterrestrial, like aliens, because they are bringing something that is not common in the other classrooms or in the other schools, and they are doing something a little bit alternative, between brackets, please. I really insist on that. And the problem is that on the national level, we don't have the possibility to integrate mental health topic on the curriculum, because I think that if we are aware about it, it's going to be much easier for the students to work on it with the student, for the teachers to work on it in the classrooms and with the students. So it's yeah, I think it should be coming from above, but also like the willing of the teachers to implement this in classrooms.
Thank you so much.
Okay, if I may add to what you already said, I think that as we already mentioned this morning, I don't remember who said it, but schools are not addressing, like they have not changed at all during the last years. And this is very important, not only because our societies have changed, but also because they are not really addressing the needs, the developmental needs of kids. And I think that mental health is very related to other aspects of life as well. So in many schools in Greece, kids have to be stable and sit down and listen during many hours of the day, which is, of course, not helping mental health. So it is, of course, something curricular. The curricula should change, but we should be aware that making them flexible, because we have seen that there are some flexible curricula in some countries. We should always take into account the inclusivity factor, because making curricula flexible might affect schools becoming no, it might lead to school segregation. Like some schools might be considered better than others. So some families will attend this, and migrant children will still go to their neighborhood school, which might be one of these schools that have flexible curricula. It might be not. So I think that what we should be aware of is that while we try to address issues like mental health or inclusivity or anything, this actually refers to everything we've talked about. We should be careful of what we do, because sometimes it leads to different results, and we've seen it in many countries.
Thank you so much. I think we're running at the end in terms of timing. Yeah, okay.
So
maybe one more.
We have
and then
one last intervention, and then as we're closing in to the end of the conference, maybe we can wrap up everything with Mojib table, which is, it's basically something that comes together with all the things that you said already, and then we can say our bye byes and see each other for the outcome that is going to come out of this discussion.
Uh, let's see if I remember what I wanted to say. Regarding mental health and how to, it's a multifactorial approach, I think. I'd like to always start with the basics, in a sense, and how can you understand, how can you help teachers, etc. It's intervision, supervision, team building, etc. If I just give an example for, I know I speak from an example of higher education, it's different than secondary education, etc. But I have colleagues, we have a team with six teachers, and we all have to do the same thing with our class. And I see that a lot of my colleagues have a little bit difficulty with the research that they have to do with the students, because I don't know it, and it's not in my expertise. You can ask a question at that point from, do we all have to have to have the same expertise at the same level? Or do we facilitate each other, and do we be complementary? And if it's about the topic, what we do is the whole research cycle, and my topic is, let's say, dissemination, etc. Okay, I talk about it with them, and I understand, and I help my colleagues in that expense. But intervision or supervision is also important, because as a teacher, you're standing alone before your class. Mental health is a thing. I think it's, my experience is not as much a taboo as 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I think also COVID did a lot of that, to be able to speak about. And for me, the basics, like I said in the beginning of my intervention, is be able to also speak about those things. And that doesn't mean I have to give my whole personal life on the table to the students, but saying and adjusting that when you're not okay, it's okay to not be okay. And have a kind of teacher student relationship that's professional, of course, but not as far. That's the way I teach, for example. It's not to be so from my ivory tower and saying it has to be like this, but also be attentive to who is sitting in front of me, speaking about it. Just be authentic. I think that's some really important thing, in that if I am tired and I need a coffee before I start my classes, that's the first thing I'm saying. I'm tired today. It's going to be maybe a little bit different as normal, but so you know what to expect. Students also see us as the adult in the room, and they're going to tailor of examples that we give. They're going to use it also. So I think, of course, there's a lot of stress on teachers, like you said in the beginning. I really acknowledge that. And also we can have an impact, I think, as a student, as a teacher, to just regulating those things and trying to keep or stay at the basis of it, and how we can understand and complement each other, and also help each other in that way. Because of course, I always would like to have more means from the government, of course, but also in Belgium nowadays with the new government, it's not going to be easy. So yeah, we're not going to rely on that. we can give those recommendations, but I think we also have to see how we always can do that. And the last thing, which I discovered the last couple of weeks with my class, because I have a really big class in comprehensive than last year, when you give responsibility, people of students take responsibility. And as a teacher, you always tend to, in my experience, I have to be the know-it-all. I have to be always be able to answer every question. So I'm now giving more responsibility to my students, and to my surprise, they really cope well with it. And I have another task now, more as a coach in that classroom.
Thank you so much. We've talked about so many different points, which I've noted down in terms of addressing the mental health taboo, looking at barriers that exist in the classroom, ensuring external support, and in terms of that, having dedicated budgets, passing on, delegating responsibility, and also looking at the challenges that teachers have in terms of providing the adequate support in the classroom, but also looking after their own mental health. So I'll stop there, but I'll pass over to you, Mujib, to summarize.
Something really quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just, it came up now, so I also think that while we are talking now, I am thinking of communitarian relationships, like this is very connected to mental health. We have lost these communitarian and solidarity bonds among us in society in general, and this affects our mental health, both in society and in schools. So I think that another challenge is that we live in an individualistic society. So we have to work to a different direction while we are living in an individualistic context. So this is another challenge, I think, because of course the environment influences us even if we're not aware about it. So this is my only parenthesis here.
Great point, because it can definitely add to cultural barriers as well, and lack of understanding between the two. I just want to say that I will have to leave, so I'll quietly leave, but I wish I could stay behind and talk to each and one of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Fatima. Thank you. Actually, I'll be talking more on macro level, and I think I have only 10 minutes. And but maybe the last thing to add it on that discussion, what I remember from my interviews with migrant students in Germany, the Netherlands, and Sweden, most of them were saying that zero tolerance policy of teachers were putting us in a difficult situation, like minor mistakes, linguistic mistakes. This was highlighted, and this was putting a lot of pressure on us to avoid any kind of errors in our homework, etc. Well, my part is more focused on European policies on migrant and refugee education, and I would like to have your opinion on this. Well, the question is, what are those policies which are existing now? I would name some of them that actually reflect on such policies, which include migrant and refugees education. One is education and training 2020 working group mandates, 2016, 2018, action plan on integration and inclusion, which 2021, 2027, which is also reflecting on migrants' education. And of course, the common European asylum system, which also emphasize on education, European migration network, the European framework for social integration of migrants, EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, all these basics, Council of Europe's education policy framework, new pact on migration and asylum that we have witnessed more recently. But probably the question, let me phrase it this way, can European policies adequately address migrants and refugees' education needs? If not, what can be done? Floor is yours.
I can start.
Please.
Okay, so I think that at least in Greece, I have this feeling that there have been many interventions towards this direction, much investment as well, but actions are very specific and short term. And I don't think that they are interconnected. So from my experience, I think that the European Union should put some pressure on countries to develop national strategies. Of course, these strategies should be flexible because each region has its different specific characteristics, and they should be adapted to what people need in each place. But I think that having a concrete strategy and steps to follow for a long term, and not, I mean, now many people perceive in Greece that we have passed to the era that migrant children are integrated into the society, and this is not the case at all. So I think that there should be a connection to what people experience and what policies think that the reality their reality is. And this is what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Maria. I think it was important intervention, and usually naturalization is perceived as the last stage of integration and then post-integration. Anything?
Yeah, about the terms of integration, I have different thoughts about these terms because it's close to the assimilation. So it's very tough to find something to describe this kind of process. So, for example, in our case in Italy, we have close 1 million of students that have migrants background. Most of them, the 70% of this number, they were born in Italy, and the rest of the part they came in Italy after. And there is a big problem that's related to the citizenship, the recognition of this kind of status. For example, these students, these 1 million students, they haven't the Italian citizenship. This is a real big problem because if you want to try to facilitate the process of integration, inclusion, something like that, you have to like a country, like a state, you have to help to reach these goals for these students. And so we have this kind of problem in Italy. I don't know in other parts of Europe. And most of these people, they were born here in Italy, sorry, and for them it's very easy to learn the Italian language. Maybe we have the problem for the new refugees because they have a lot of problem to integrate in the school to learn the language. This is a problem, for example, that represented by the approach that is utilized by teachers, the education systems, because they haven't a good level, for example, to help the students, for example, about they haven't basics of, for example, the intercultural education. They sometimes know just Italian language. They don't know English, French, and it's very tough for them to help the students to integrate at school. And yes, this is a big problem that we had. We work a lot because I came from Palermo and work for CCA. We work a lot on the non-formal education with school that have most of students that have migrant background. And as I said, for example, so before in Italy is the same. There is a lack of intentions between school. Sorry, they're represented by the teachers. They want to participate, for example, in the training course that try to help to create a good connection, relation between the students and just not the students, family, students, and school. So we have this kind of, is a structural problem that we have right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like even if we cannot approach every need in a universal policy framework, we should put, or like we should force for putting an emphasis on cultural interaction. Because I feel like the context of learning and the context of education has to be more of a dialogical process than just of an implementation one. So to incorporate matters of mental health, of creating safe environments, of combating stigma, xenophobia and racism in learning environments, and promoting inclusion, we should really put a focus on the aspect of cultural interaction, of bringing cultural backgrounds forth, trying to, even in small scale implementations, put some efforts for cultural days, bring forth a dialogue between cultures so that people feel more safe into coming into a new environment, feel more welcoming. So I feel like this is an aspect that we should actually put some pressure on implementing on an EU policy level as well. Of course, again, the dynamics are different in every region. There are different needs. There are different methodologies of putting together different cultures and into the classroom as well. But I think this is an aspect that we're kind of lacking right now, and we should be more willing to talk about how do we not only incorporate people into a culture, but be more open into learning their own cultures and their own good practices, and try and foster this environment of exchange, exploration, other than indifference and ignorance that can actually lead to a lot of negative impact.
Thank you. I don't know if you have time, but I think you already pointed out, you referred to important points actually. And first of all, do you have anything in mind that, on education, we have this certain policy at EU level and that is very effective? But as I understood, there are challenges. And some of you refer to the legal status of migrants and refugees, which hinder their access to education. And of course, citizenship and legal status is playing an important role, particularly when those people are sitting in the class and still thinking about their deportation, they will not be able to focus. And culture connections or intercultural opening is also important, but this needs to be pushed also maybe at EU level, not only on state level. But we have some examples of like good practices also in Germany of intercultural opening. For example, in one hospital, a woman is like a woman doctor is assigned to a woman a migrant who wish to have this kind of doctor or interpreters. But I would leave this floor once again to you, or I think, is there any other questions or concerns or comments on
I
EU
just
level?
wanted to add that I think that the legal status that you stressed is very important, because if people do not feel like they have the right to live in a place, then they cannot really make any efforts to belong to a school or a community. And this affects everything that we have talked about. So I think that this is very important.
Thank you very much, Maria, and hope to create a very migrant-friendly environment in the future.
We will, for sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our facilitators and Fatima as well, who has already left. Thank you for the participants and for this amazing discussion. I'm gonna collect the notes and give you an outcome in a couple of weeks, realistically. And thank you again. I hope you had a great time. I hope it was a nice discussion, a nice event. We absolutely did. And I'll see you soon. Thank you.